Letter of ELIA to Robert Southey by Charles Lamb. Sir, you have done me an unfriendly office, without perhaps much considering what you were doing. You have given an ill name to my poor lucubrations. In a recent paper on infidelity, you usher in a conditional commendation of them with an exception, which, preceding the encomium, and taking up nearly the same space with it, must impress your readers with the notion that the objectionable parts in them are at least equal in quantity to the pardonable. The censure is in fact the criticism, the praise a concession merely. Pg 266 exceptions usually follow to qualify praise or blame, but there stands your reproof in the very front of your notice in ugly characters like some bugbear, to frighten all good Christians from purchasing. Through you I am become an object of suspicion to preceptors of youth and fathers of families. A book, which wants only a sounder religious feeling to be as delightful as it is original, with no further explanation, what must your readers conjecture, but that my little volume is some vehicle for heresy or infidelity? The quotation, which you honour me by subjoining, oddly enough, is of a character which bespeaks a temperament in the writer the very reverse of that your reproof goes to insinuate. Had you been taxing me with superstition, the passage would have been pertinent to the censure. Was it worth your while to go so far out of your way to affront the feelings of an old friend, and commit yourself by an irrelevant quotation, for the pleasure of reflecting upon a poor child, an exile at Genoa? I am at a loss what particular essay you had in view, if my poor ramblings amount to that appellation, when you were in such a hurry to thrust in your objection, like bad news foremost. Perhaps the paper on saying graces was the obnoxious feature. I have endeavoured there to rescue a voluntary duty, good in place, but never, as I remember, literally commanded, from the charge of an undecent formality. Rightly taken, sir, that paper was not against graces but want of grace, not against the ceremony, but the carelessness and slovenliness so often observed in the performance of it. Or was it that on the New Year, in which I have described the feelings of the merely natural man, on a consideration of the amazing change which is supposable to take place on our removal from this fleshly scene? If men would honestly confess their misgivings, which few men will, there are times when the strongest Christians of us, I believe, have reeled under questionings of such staggering obscurity. I do not accuse you of this weakness. There are some who tremblingly reach out shaking hands to the guidance of faith, others who stoutly venture into the dark, their human confidence their leader, whom they mistake for faith, and, investing themselves beforehand with cherubic wings as they fancy, find their new robes as familiar, and fitting to their supposed growth and stature in godliness, as the coat they Pg 267 left off yesterday, some whose hope totters upon crutches, others who stalk into futurity upon stilts. The contemplation of a spiritual world, which, without the addition of a misgiving conscience, is enough to shake some natures to their foundation, is smoothly got over by others, who shall float over the black billows, in their little boat of no distrust, as unconcernedly as over a summer sea. The difference is chiefly constitutional. One man shall love his friends and his friends' faces, and under the uncertainty of conversing with them again, in the same manner and familiar circumstances of sight, speech, and sea, as upon earth in a moment of no irreverent weakness for a dream while, no more would be almost content, for a reward of a life of virtue, if he could ascribe such acceptance to his lame performances, to take up his portion with those he loved, and was made to love in this good world which he knows, which was created so lovely beyond his deservings, another embracing a more exalted vision, so that he might receive indefinite additaments of power, knowledge, beauty, glory, and see, is ready to forgo the recognition of humbler individualities of earth, and the old familiar faces. The shapings of our heavens are the modifications of our constitution, and Mr. Feeble Mind, or Mr. Great Heart, is born in every one of us. Some, and such have been accounted the safest divines, have shrunk from pronouncing upon the final state of any man, nor dare they pronounce the case of Judas to be desperate. Others, with stronger optics, as plainly as with the eye of flesh, shall behold a given king in bliss, and a given chamberlain in torment, even to the eternizing of a cast of the eye in the latter, his own self-marked and good-humouredly born deformity on earth, but supposed to aggravate the uncouth and hideous expression of his pangs in the other place. That one man can presume so far, and that another would with shuddering disclaim such confidences, is, I believe, an effect of the nerves purely. If in either of these papers or elsewhere I have been betrayed into some levities, not affronting the sanctuary, but glancing perhaps at some of the outskirts and extreme edges, the debatable land between the holy and the profane regions, for the admixture of man's inventions, twisting themselves with the name of religion itself, has artfully made it difficult PG 268 to touch even the alloy, without in some men's estimation soiling the fine gold. If I have sported within the purlieus of serious matter, it was, I dare say, a humour, be not startled, sir, which I have unwittingly derived from yourself. You have all your life been making a jest of the devil, not of the scriptural meaning of that dark essence, personal or allegorical, for the nature is nowhere plainly delivered. I acquit you of intentional irreverence, but indeed you have made wonderfully free with, and been mighty pleasant upon, the popular idea and attributes of him. A noble lord, your brother visionary, has scarcely taken greater liberties with the material keys and merely Catholic notion of St. Peter. You have flattered him in prose, you have chanted him in goodly odes, you have been his jester, volunteer laureate and self-elected court poet to Beelzebub. You have never ridiculed, I believe, what you thought to be religion, but you are always girding at what some pious, but perhaps mistaken folks think to be so. For this reason I am sorry to hear that you are engaged upon a life of George Fox. I know you will fall into the error of intermixing some comic stuff with your seriousness. The Quakers tremble at the subject in your hands, the Methodists are shy of you upon account of their founder, but above all our popish brethren are most in your debt. The errors of that church have proved a fruitful source to your scoffing vein, their legend has been a golden one to you. And here your friends, sir, have noticed a notable inconsistency. To the imposing rites, the solemn penances, devout austerities of that communion, the affecting though erring piety of their hermits, the silence and solitude of the Chartreux, their crossings, their holy waters, their Virgin and their saints, to these, they say, you have been indebted for the best feelings, and the richest imagery of your epic poetry. You have drawn copious drafts upon Loretto. We thought at one time you were going post to Rome, but that in the facetious commentaries, which it is your custom to append so plentifully, and some say, injudiciously, to your loftiest performances in this kind, you spurn the uplifted toe, which you but just now seem to court, leave his holiness in the lurch, and show him a fair pair of Protestant heels under your Romish vestment. When we think you already at the wicket, suddenly a violent cross wind blows you transverse PG 269. You pick up pence by showing the hallowed bones, shrine and crucifix, and you take money a second time by exposing the trick of them afterwards. You carry your verse to Castle Angelo for sale in a morning, and, swifter than a pedlar can transmute his pack, you are at Canterbury with your prose where before night. Sir, is it that I dislike you in this merry vein? The very reverse. No countenance becomes an intelligent jest better than your own. It is your grave aspect when you look awful upon your poor friends which I would deprecate. In more than one place, if I mistake not, you have been pleased to compliment me at the expense of my companions. I cannot accept your compliment at such a price. The upbraiding a man's poverty naturally makes him look about him, to see whether he be so poor indeed as he is presumed to be. You have put me upon counting my riches. Really, sir, I did not know I was so wealthy in the article of friendships. There is, and whom you never heard of, but exemplary characters both, and excellent churchgoers, and mine and my father's friend for nearly half a century, and the enthusiast for Wordsworth's poetry, T.N. T. a little tainted with Socinianism, it is to be feared but constant in his attachments and a capital critic, and a sturdy old Athanasian, so that sets all to rights again, and W. the light and warm as light-hearted Janus of the London, and the translator of Dante, still a curate, modest and amiable C., and Alan C., the large-hearted Scot, and P. R. candid and affectionate as his own poetry, and A. P. Coleridge's friend, and G. N. his more than friend, and Coleridge himself the same to me still as in those old evenings when we used to sit and speculate, do you remember them, sir, at our old Salutation Tavern, upon Pantasocracy and golden days to come on earth, and W. Th. Why, sir, I might drop my rentroll here, such goodly farms and manors have I reckoned up already. In what possessions has not this last name alone estated me PG 270? But I will go on, and M., the noble-minded kinsman by wedlock of W. Th. and H.C.R., unwearied in the offices of a friend, and Clarkson, almost above the narrowness of that relation, yet condescending not seldom heretofore from the labours of his world-embracing charity to bless my humble roof, and the gall-less and single-minded Dyer, and the high-minded associate of Cook, the veteran colonel, with his lusty heart still sending cartels of defiance to old time, and not least W.A., the last and steadiest left to me of that little knot of whist players, that used to assemble weekly for so many years at the Queen's Gate, you remember them, sir, and called Admiral Burney friend. I will come to the point at once. I believe you will not make many exceptions to my associates so far, but I have purposely omitted some intimacies, which I do not yet repent of having contracted, with two gentlemen, diametrically opposed to yourself in principles, you will understand me to allude to the authors of Rimini and of the Table Talk. And first of the former, it is an error more particularly incident to persons of the correctest principles and habits to seclude themselves from the rest of mankind, as from another species, and form into knots and clubs. The best people, herding thus exclusively, are in danger of contracting a narrowness. Heat and cold, dryness and moisture in the natural world do not fly asunder, to split the globe into sectarian parts and separations, but mingling as they best may, correct the malignity of any single predominance. The analogy holds, I suppose, in the moral world. If all the good people were to ship themselves off to terra incognitas, what in humanity's name is to become of the refuse? If the persons, whom I have chiefly in view, have not pushed matters to this extremity yet, they carry them as far as they can go. Instead of mixing with the infidel and the freethinker, in the room of opening a negotiation, to try at least to find out at which gate the error entered, they huddle close together, in a weak fear of infection, like that pusillanimous underling in Spenser. And if they be writers in orthodox journals, addressing them pg 271 selves only to the irritable passions of the unbeliever, they proceed in a safe system of strengthening the strong hands, and confirming the valiant knees, of converting the already converted, and proselyting their own party. I am the more convinced of this from a passage in the very treatise which occasioned this letter. It is where, having recommended to the doubter the writings of Michaelis and Lardner, you ride triumphant over the necks of all infidels, skeptics and dissenters, from this time to the world's end, upon the wheels of two unanswerable deductions. I do not hold it meet to set down, in a miscellaneous compilation like this, such religious words as you have thought fit to introduce into the pages of a petulant literary journal. I therefore beg leave to substitute numerals, and refer to the Quarterly Review for July, for filling of them up. Here, say you, as in the history of 7, if these books are authentic, the events which they relate must be true. If they were written by 8, 9 is 10 and 11. Your first deduction, if it means honestly, rests upon two identical propositions, though I suspect an unfairness in one of the terms, which this would not be quite the proper place for explicating. At all events you have no cause to triumph. You have not been proving the premises, but refer for satisfaction therein to very long and laborious works, which may well employ the sceptic a 12-month or two to digest, before he can possibly be ripe for your conclusion. When he has satisfied himself about the premises, he will concede to you the inference, I dare say, most readily. But your latter deduction, viz., that because 8 has written a book concerning 9, therefore 10 and 11 was certainly his meaning, is one of the most extraordinary conclusions per saltum that I have had the good fortune to meet with. As far as 10 is verbally asserted in the writings, all sects must agree with you, but you cannot be ignorant of the many various ways in which the doctrine of the has been understood, from a low figurative expression, with the Unitarians, up to the most mysterious actuality, in which highest sense alone you and your church take it. And for 11, that there is no other possible conclusion, to hazard this in the face of so many thousands of Arians and Socinians, and C, who have drawn so opposite a one, is such a piece of theological hardihood, as I think warrants me in concluding that, when you sit down to pen theology, you do not at all consider your pg 272 opponents, but have in your eye merely and exclusively readers of the same way of thinking with yourself, and therefore have no occasion to trouble yourself with the quality of the logic, to which you treat them. Neither can I think, if you had had the welfare of the poor child, over whose hopeless condition you whine so lamentably, and I must think unseasonably, seriously at heart, that you could have taken the step of sticking him up by name, th is as good as naming him, to perpetuate an outrage upon the parental feelings, as long as the Quarterly Review shall last. Was it necessary to specify an individual case, and give to Christian compassion the appearance of personal attack? Is this the way to conciliate unbelievers, or not rather to widen the breach irreparably? I own I could never think so considerably of myself, as to decline the society of an agreeable or worthy man, upon difference of opinion only. The impediments and the facilitations to a sound belief are various and inscrutable as the heart of man. Some believe upon weak principles. Others cannot feel the efficacy of the strongest. One of the most candid, most upright and single-meaning men I ever knew was the late Thomas Holcroft. I believe he never said one thing and meant another in his life, and as near as I can guess, he never acted otherwise than with the most scrupulous attention to conscience. Ought we to wish the character false, for the sake of a hollow compliment to Christianity? Accident introduced me to the acquaintance of Mr. L.H., and the experience of his many friendly qualities confirmed a friendship between us. You, who have been misrepresented yourself, I should hope, have not lent an idle ear to the calumnies which have been spread abroad respecting this gentleman. I was admitted to his household for some years, and do most solemnly aver that I believe him to be in his domestic relations as correct as any man. He chose an ill-judged subject for a poem, the peccant humours of which have been visited on him tenfold by the artful use, which his adversaries have made, of an equivocal term. The subject itself was started by Dante, but better because brieflier treated of. But the crime of the lovers, in the Italian and the English poet with its aggravated enormity of circumstance, is not of a kind, as the critics of the latter well knew, with those conjunctions, for which nature herself has provided no excuse, because no pg 273 temptation. It has nothing in common with the black horrors, sung by Ford and Massinger. The familiarizing of it in tale or fable may be for that reason incidentally more contagious. In spite of Rimini, I must look upon its author as a man of taste and a poet. He is better than so. He is one of the most cordial-minded men I ever knew, and matchless as a fireside companion. I mean not to affront or wound your feelings when I say that, in his more genial moods, he has often reminded me of you. There is the same air of mild dogmatism, the same condescending to a boyish sportiveness, in both your conversations. His handwriting is so much the same with your own, that I have opened more than one letter of his, hoping, nay, not doubting, but it was from you, and have been disappointed. He will bear with my saying so at the discovery of my error. L.H. is unfortunate in holding some loose and not very definite speculations, for at times I think he hardly knows whither his premises would carry him on marriage. The tenets, I conceive, of the political justice, carried a little further. For anything I could discover in his practice, they have reference, like those, to some future possible condition of society, and not to the present times, but neither for these obliquities of thinking, upon which my own conclusions are as distant as the poles asunder, nor for his political asperities and petulancies, which are wearing out with the heats and vanities of youth, did I select him for a friend, but for qualities which fitted him for that relation. I do not know whether I flatter myself with being the occasion, but certain it is that, touched with some misgivings for sundry harsh things which he had written aforetime against our friend C. Before he left this country, he sought a reconciliation with that gentleman, himself being his own introducer, and found it. L.H. is now in Italy, on his departure to which land with much regret I took my leave of him and of his little family, 7 of them, sir, with their mother, and as kind a set of little people, Th and all, as affectionate children as ever blessed a parent. Had you seen them, sir, I think you could not have looked upon them as so many little Johnesses, but rather as pledges of the vessel's safety, that was to bear such a freight of love. I wish you would read Mr. H.'s lines to that same Th, 6 years old during a sickness. pg 274. They are to be found on the 47th page of Foliage, and ask yourself how far they are out of the spirit of Christianity. I have a letter from Italy, received but the other day, into which L.H. has put as much heart, and as many friendly yearnings after old associates and native country as I think paper can well hold. It would do you no hurt to give that the perusal also. From the other gentleman I neither expect nor desire, as he is well assured, any such concessions as L.H. made to see what hath soured him, and made him to suspect his friends of infidelity towards him, when there was no such matter I know not. I stood well with him for 15 years, the proudest of my life, and have ever spoke my full mind of him to some, to whom his panegyric must naturally be least tasteful. I never in thought swerved from him, I never betrayed him, I never slackened in my admiration of him. I was the same to him, neither better nor worse, though he could not see it, as in the days when he thought fit to trust me. At this instant he may be preparing for me some compliment above my deserts, as he has sprinkled many such among his admirable books, for which I rest his debtor. Or, for anything I know or can guess to the contrary, he may be about to read a lecture on my weaknesses. He is welcome to them, as he was to my humble hearth, if they can divert a spleen or ventilate a fit of sullenness. I wish he would not quarrel with the world at the rate he does, but the reconciliation must be effected by himself, and I despair of living to see that day. But protesting against much that he has written, and some things which he chooses to do, judging him by his conversation, which I enjoyed so long and relished so deeply, or by his books in those places where no clouding passion intervenes, I should belie my own conscience if I said less than that I think W.H. to be in his natural and healthy state one of the wisest and finest spirits breathing. So far from being ashamed of that intimacy which was betwixt us, It is my boast that I was able for so many years to have preserved it entire, and I think I shall go to my grave without finding, or expecting to find, such another companion. But I forget my manners, you will pardon me, sir. I return to the correspondence. pg 275. Sir, you were pleased, you know where, to invite me to a compliance with the wholesome forms and doctrines of the Church of England. I take your advice with as much kindness as it was meant, but I must think the invitation rather more kind than seasonable. I am a dissenter. The last sect with which you can remember me to have made common profession were the Unitarians. You would think it not very pertinent, if, fearing that all was not well with you, I were gravely to invite you, for a remedy, to attend with me a course of Mr. Belsham's lectures at Hackney. Perhaps I have scruples to some of your forms and doctrines, but if I come, am I secure of civil treatment? The last time I was in any of your places of worship was on Easter Sunday last. I had the satisfaction of listening to a very sensible sermon of an argumentative turn, delivered with great propriety by one of your bishops. The place was Westminster Abbey. As such religion as I have, has always acted on me more by way of sentiment than argumentative process. I was not unwilling, after sermon ended, by no unbecoming transition, to pass over to some serious feelings, impossible to be disconnected from the sight of those old tombs, and see, but by whose order I know not, I was debarred that privilege even for so short a space as a few minutes, and turned, like a dog or some profane person, out into the common street, with feelings which I could not help, but not very genial to the day or the discourse. I do not know that I shall ever venture myself again into one of your churches. You had your education at Westminster, and doubtless among those dim aisles and cloisters, you must have gathered much of that devotional feeling in those young years, on which your purest mind feeds still, and may it feed. The antiquarian spirit, strong in you and gracefully blending ever with the religious, may have been sown in you among those wrecks of splendid mortality. You owe it to the place of your education. You owe it to your learned fondness for the architecture of your ancestors. You owe it to the venerableness of your ecclesiastical establishment, which is daily lessoned and called in question through these practices, to speak aloud your sense of them, never to desist from raising your voice against them, till they be totally done away with and abolished, till the doors of Westminster Abbey be no longer closed against the decent, though low in purse, enthusiast, or blameless de pg 276 vodi, who must commit an injury against his family economy, if he would be indulged with a bare admission within its walls. You owe it to the decencies, which you wish to see maintained in its impressive services, that our cathedral be no longer an object of inspection to the poor at those times only, in which they must rob from their attendance on the worship every minute which they can bestow upon the fabric. In vain the public prints have taken up this subject, in vain such poor nameless writers as myself express their indignation. A word from you, sir, a hint in your journal, would be sufficient to fling open the doors of the beautiful temple again, as we can remember them when we were boys. At that time of life, what would the imaginative faculty, such as it is in both of us, have suffered, if the entrance to so much reflection had been obstructed by the demand of so much silver? If we had scraped it up to gain an occasional admission, as we certainly should have done, would the sight of those old tombs have been as impressive to us, while we had been weighing anxiously prudence against sentiment, as when the gates stood open, as those of the adjacent park, when we could walk in at any time as the mood brought us, shorter or longer time as that lasted? Is the being shown over a place the same as silently for ourselves detecting the genius of it? In no part of our beloved abbey now can a person find entrance, out of service time, under the sum of 2 shillings. The rich and the great will smile at the anticlimax, presumed to lie in these 2 short words. But you can tell them, sir, how much quiet worth, how much capacity for enlarged feeling, how much taste and genius may coexist, especially in youth, with a purse incompetent to this demand. A respected friend of ours, during his late visit to the metropolis, presented himself for admission to St. Paul's. At the same time a decently clothed man, with as decent a wife and child, were bargaining for the same indulgence. The price was only 2 pence each person. The poor but decent man hesitated, desirous to go in, but there were 3 of them and he turned away reluctantly. Perhaps he wished to have seen the tomb of Nelson. Perhaps the interior of the cathedral was his object, but in the state of his finances, even 6 pence might reasonably seem too much. Tell the aristocracy of the country, no man can do it more impressively. Instruct them of what value these insignificant pieces of money, these minims to their sight, may pg 277 be to their humbler brethren. Shame these sellers out of the temple. Show the poor that you can sometimes think of them in some other light than as mutineers and malcontents. Conciliate them by such kind methods to their superiors, civil and ecclesiastical. Stop the mouths of the railers, and suffer your old friends upon the old terms, again to honour and admire you. Stifle not the suggestions of your better nature with the stale evasion that an indiscriminate admission would expose the tombs to violation. Remember your boy days. Did you ever see or hear of a mob in the abbey while it was free to all? Did the rabble come there or trouble their heads about such speculations? It is all that you can do to drive them into your churches. They do not voluntarily offer themselves. They have, alas, no passion for antiquities, for tomb of king or prelate, sage or poet. If they had, they would be no longer the rabble. For 40 years that I have known the fabric, the only well-attested charge of violation adduced has been a ridiculous dismemberment committed upon the effigy of that amiable spy Major André. And is it for this, the wanton mischief of some schoolboy, fired perhaps with raw notions of transatlantic freedom, or the remote possibility of such a mischief occurring again, so easily to be prevented by stationing a constable within the walls, if the vergers are incompetent to the duty? Is it upon such wretched pretences that the people of England are made to pay a new Peter's pence, so long abrogated, or must content themselves with contemplating the ragged exterior of their cathedral? The mischief was done about the time that you were a scholar there. Do you know anything about the unfortunate relic? Can you help us in this emergency to find the nose? Or can you give Chantry a notion, from memory, of its pristine life and vigour? I am willing for peace sake to subscribe my guinea towards a restoration of the lamented feature. I am, sir, your humble servant ELIA. PG 278.